ASEAN Breakfast Call. First and foremost news from Southeast Asia. Good morning, this is Arlene.
Hi, this is Gowri.
And of course, you're listening to us at Durian ASEAN,
the voice of discovery and sharing.
So Gowri, how was your holiday? I had a lot of food.
You had Hari Raya Haji, yeah.
Yes.
How was that?
It was full of meat, definitely. A lot of cows were being slaughtered.
The cows.
Yeah, we slaughtered the cows, unfortunately. Pity the cows. But there were a lot of discussion among some of the civil society friends. Should we slaughter cows during Hari Raya Haji? Maybe we should just be vegan during Hari Raya Haji and still keep that Haji spirit.
Well, it depends on the whole point of Hari Raya Haji in the first place. Well, the other name, as we know, is called Hari Raya Korban. So if you don't actually slaughter anything, there's kind of really no point for the whole celebration, right?
Yes. So in a way, you cannot separate from slaughtering cows or whatever animals it is during Hari Raya Korban or Idul Adha. And you cannot separate Oktoberfest with not drinking beer.
Exactly. Oktoberfest is an event that a lot of people look forward to every year. And yes, I'm one of them. And it's a huge festival that starts at the end of September all the way into October. And it's the time to get special discounts wherever you go. Not wherever you go, but most bars in Malaysia will offer some special deal when it comes to Oktoberfest, some special discounts on your beer. But unfortunately, there have been a request to ban Oktoberfest in Malaysia.
Oktoberfest is deemed un-Islamic. So Gowri, you love your Guinness and you're deemed un-Islamic for drinking your Guinness according to PAS Nasruddin Hassan. The PAS Central Committee member said that the state government and also the federal government should ban Oktoberfest celebration. And he said that this will affect the sensitivities of Muslim in Malaysia. Apparently, they are Muslim going to bars and clubs, watching people drinking.
Watching people drinking? Well, the biggest issue here is that it's an issue of sensitivity, but it goes back to our earlier news about Hari Raya Haji as well. When it comes to slaughtering the cows, of course, that is also kind of insensitive too. But it's just something that we have to deal with because Malaysia is a multicultural country. We have a very diverse community.
But if to be fair, Oktoberfest is not a cultural or even religious festival of any of the races
Well,
in
religious,
Malaysia.
yes, but cultural, I think it has somehow become part of our culture.
It's like Christmas.
Yeah, and we have been having this for forever. It's like St. Patrick's, it's not we're not an Irish country, but St. Patrick's is so big here. Every year it's celebrated in Penang, in KL, and there's a huge Irish community here, and there's a huge German community here as well. So it's probably insensitive to them if you ban Oktoberfest.
Just like not eating slaughtered meat during Hari Raya Korban, the same with not drinking beer during Oktoberfest. Can you imagine drinking non-alcoholic beer or malt drink?
I don't even know there's non-alcoholic beer.
Oh, there is apparently. It tastes exactly like beer.
No, thank you.
You
no,
won't
thank
get
you. No.
you won't get tipsy out of it. It's totally halal. And talking about halal, besides the Oktoberfest, is also the story of this is actually it's just a small story, but it is
all the rage right now.
All
and
the
it's
rage
being reported by almost every single newspaper in the world.
That's the funny thing, isn't it? So what's the news about that?
It's this one husband who is accused of plotting his wife's death on honeymoon, and he pleads not guilty. So a little chronology to the story where Shreen Dewani is accused of masterminding the slaying of his wife in Cape Town, Africa. but he denied the allegations, saying they were a victim of carjacking. But the taxi driver and two other men who were convicted said that it was him who paid the taxi driver to kill his wife and cover it up.
It's funny how news around the world would highlight such. It's not really a news that is like poverty or hunger or wars, but it is just a small news happen in an area that probably not many people think about it, when it comes to murder. And suddenly the whole world are highlighting this news. It shows that there's some sort of priority misplaced here.
It's also because this guy who is accused is actually a millionaire British businessman, so that's probably why it's all hyped up.
So the more money you have, the more celebrity status you have, even though you only plan to kill your wife during your honeymoon.
We do hope that, of course, whether whoever the guy is, whoever the girl is, of course, killing somebody is not right in any way. So we do hope that the wife's family will get the answers that they need, because it's always terrible to lose someone in the family, and hopefully the justice will be served.
Justice hopefully will be served by this couple. Hopefully that the husband will be able to realize that, hey, if you don't like your wife, don't marry her.
Or divorce.
Or divorce.
There's no need to resort to killing, right?
Yeah, there's no need.
And that's way too extreme. There's a lot of other ways to go about dealing with someone that you don't really like.
Or you can convert to Islam.
What?
No, it's just a joke. The news another news that we would like to highlight is, of course, about budget 2015.
Yes, of course. And with all the recent drama about the petrol prices going up.
Last week, it went out. It went up really tremendously, although it was just 20 cents. But to those laymen who are not expecting it to raise suddenly, were shocked. And can you imagine, it was only announced later in the evening, and by midnight everyone was queuing in almost all of the petrol stations around the city.
That's right. The news was only out around about 8 or 9 p.m. that night, and people only had about 2 or 3 hours to go fill up their tanks, and they didn't even have time to voice their protest or to do anything about it. All they can do is go and fill up their tank as soon as possible, because that's the easiest, safest way to do it.
So for those who are driving, it's definitely important for you to fill up your tank before the price hike. But apparently, we can't do now. Of course we can't. But my point is, does it make any difference, filling your tank full?
It doesn't? No? Well, I wouldn't know. So
a lot of people say you will only save around like 5 to 10 ringgit depending on your car mileage. So and also your car tank, how much it can fill in.
But yeah, like 5 to 10 ringgit would probably be a lot of money for people who are not so well off, and they probably want to save that 5 or 10 ringgit,
But that's the layman's point of view, like 20 cents is too much, high cost of living. But if you look at the bigger picture, it's about the idea of subsidy. The reason why the government want to lift up subsidy for oil, because oil is an unrenewable energy source, and we cannot be a dependent nation on oil, and that's fair enough. We shouldn't be depending on oil at all, and we should move beyond just being an oil consumption nation to a more energy efficient nation, in the sense that we should depend more on renewable energy. And do you know that Malaysia is actually one of the highest consumer of coal in Southeast Asia? Yes. And with that, it shows that our nations are definitely becoming a bulging middle class, where we just keep on consuming, but we are not growing enough to justify. So in a way, we do need to leave certain types of subsidy, especially on non-renewable resources. But the debate on subsidy to be lifted up bit by bit for now, do you think it is something that is rational? This is based on the government's budget rationalization plan in budget 2014 as well as budget 2015.
But it's not just about whether it's done bit by bit. If the government is really planning on cutting off the subsidy completely, and they have a reason to rationalize it, but for now we still don't have any alternative sources for petrol. And yeah, we do have some hybrid cars coming up from Honda and Toyota and all, but it's still, most Malaysians are not even aware of these hybrid cars, and they're not aware of the alternatives. It's also a mindset thing that we always want to drive a big, expensive car, and of course that consumes more petrol.
Or small kancil Myvi type car. You know, Myvi is the best-selling cars in Malaysia, as well as certain types of Proton. And
also people have been asked to take public transport, but it's a well-known fact, you know, the reliability of the public transport in our country. But probably...
And it's not even integrated. Let's say you want to go from here all the way to Seremban. You have to take 2 or 3 trains, and you have to take a bus some more. But if a nation that focus on integrated, well-serviced trains, that means you can go all the way from Perlis to Johor without even, you know, having to wait for anything except for getting the train rides, and also make sure that you get your bus rides as well on time. But the problem here, a lot of our public transportation is totally unreliable, and it's quite expensive, you know, to be fair with it.
And therefore the government... And another thing is, I would like to quote what Kyrie said about the subsidy as well. He said BRIM can make up for the hike in petrol price, which...
Do you agree?
Well, no one agrees with that. And BRIM is something that we only get once a year, and...
Or maybe they want to increase it twice a year, depending on how much the government is generous enough for BRIM. But BRIM is only for those who earns below minimum wage or below 3,000 ringgit per household.
Yes, but like you mentioned earlier, if they are really trying to get us off this dependency culture by not depending on subsidy, then why would they say that, oh, you can depend on BRIM? Because that is still instilling or encouraging the dependency culture in a way.
And this is what is being written and also spoken by Datuk Sri Abdul Wahid Omar. He used to work in Maybank as the CEO. Now he's working within the Prime Minister's office. He said that the government is having a targeted fuel subsidy scheme. So he said that private firms have submitted proposal for fuel prices to be charged based on income levels, vehicle types, and engine capacities. He also said that there should be reform of the fuel subsidy regime in order to move away from a blanket subsidy for all consumers, which is correct. You know, I mean, if you are asking a lot of my point of view, a lot of the car owners are middle class earners, but the problem is they have no choice because the public transportation is unreliable, and it can only fit to a maximum number of a certain number. Let's say half of the Malaysian population, or more than half, take the train to go from one place to another. Do you think the train system or the public transportation system that we have now can accommodate that huge number of people? And the problem is, I give example of the monorail the monorail coaches. If you look at it, it only has 2 coaches per train. What about in during rush hour, where probably a lot of people are taking the train, the monorail train? They can't accommodate so many people with just 2 coaches. So that's one of the reason why the government's fuel subsidy scheme is a bit short-sighted.
And they definitely have to look into this matter, especially when it comes to public transportation, because people do want to resort to public transportation. It's definitely a lot easier. You skip the jam, there's less stress, you spend less money. But sometimes it can get even more stressful because of like you mentioned, there are only two coaches, and there might be a lot of people that you don't even get into the train, or even when you're
And you have to scramble
queuing up,
yourself
yeah,
in it.
even when you're queuing up to buy tickets, it takes such a long time because there are too many people, especially if you go to KL Central. It's a nightmare if you're trying to get a train ticket around 5 o'clock.
The worst is KTM trains. I still remember my experiences getting into the train in the middle of the train ride. Suddenly the aircon is not working, or the train suddenly breaks down, and we have to resort to another train, which means we have to wait 1 hour later, or the train we can't even get any train at all because it's unreliable. The frequency of its technical problems is too frequent that people just resort to buying cars, even though cars are extremely expensive in Malaysia.
And also they are, of course, building new MRT lines to accommodate to people in the outskirts like Subang, Sunway, and also some in Puchong. But that won't be ready until 2016. So for now, we still have to make use of
Another
what
2
we
years.
have.
Another 2 years. Perhaps the government can cut subsidy, 2 years after this rather than now. That would be much better.
That would actually be a lot better. That's something that they probably didn't take into consideration.
At least the government would have some form of justification. Hey, we built
And it's
the
a
public
solid
transport.
justification.
It is a solid justification.
It's not just saying, oh, we have this to make up for it, we have that, this is how it works.
And the government don't even have to think about BRIM anymore. It can channel its resources on addressing poverty in a more structural manner rather than giving welfare packages.
And of course, other aspects of the budget will be the GST, like we mentioned earlier, the BRIM, higher minimum wage, the property market, personal taxes, lower corporate taxes, infrastructure spending, which we also mentioned, higher oil royalties, Islamic finance, and also FDI.
There's a lot of things to churn in. And for during ASEAN, we have the whole 2 weeks pre-budget and post-budget discussion, having various people from various backgrounds to provide their views on what do they expect from the budget 2015 and what they can see the government needs to improve. Next off is, of course, the story of Hong Kong. As you all know, the protesters are still camping on the road.
They're not only camping, they're also proposing to each other, marriage proposals, girlfriend, boyfriend proposals. Everything is happening on the streets right now.
And school children, they after school they go to the street, do their homework while protesting, while do their sit-in protesting towards the government. It's so interesting looking at how Hong Kongers protest, because it's something that is strange, not just to Malaysians but to probably the rest of the world. People are so orderly. Can you imagine after the protest, which was really which was throughout the night, and it was really not really violent, but it was really chaotic. But at the end of the day, they never forget to pick up the trash and put it in the rubbish bin.
They are such polite people.
It is.
Even when there's no protest here, people litter all the time. But they actually, and we have this mentality where like, oh, MPP can do it, or MPP's from Penang, but MPPJ or whatever it is that you call it here.
The DBKL.
yeah, that they can handle it. But for them, they actually take responsibility. Like, okay, we're here, we messed up this place, we're gonna clean it up. And of course, to make things worse, there was also a photo that leaked from one of the Chinese official's daughter who
It is actually the chief executive daughter. His name is Chung, if I'm not mistaken, and his daughter actually make fun of the protester.
And she was bragging about how she was having a good life, spending all the taxpayers' money. Way to go, Hong Kong.
Well, I don't know whether she realized or not, but she just have somehow put a piece of shit on her father's face in a way that it somehow legitimized why the government need to push away the current chief executive of Hong Kong.
And it justifies the protest even more. It seems that they were doing the the right thing. They knew what was going on with their money. They knew what was going on with with Hong Kong, and which is why they started protesting in the first place. And whatever she did just solidified their reason to be out there protesting against the current government.
Well, on the other hand, China is not backing off as well. This is what it says. Tung Chihua, which is the vice chairman of China's political advisory board, he urged protesters to leave for safety reasons. He said that, hey, it's not safe. Remember the Tiananmen Square incident where a lot of protesters were being harmed, and it was such a violent moment of China's democratic history. And of course, he never mentioned about Tiananmen, but you can somehow feel it when you hear him talking. This is what he said: "We have heard clearly your demands for democracy. Just like many parents and teachers in Hong Kong, I have been worried about the student safety. I urge you to leave the protest site as soon as possible." And what he thinks, he believed that disagreements should be resolved with communication. So he thinks that these students, they are just rowdy bunch of young people going down the street, not knowing what they are going to do, and just going to involve themselves with gangsterism and all that. They even accuse them of cooperating with gangsters on this.
That's kind of normal actually. When people protest, they always try to come up with these links. Oh, somebody must have paid you to go out there and protest. Somebody's behind this. There's really nothing wrong. There's no fault with the country, but they've probably had their run. It's not just Hong Kong. The whole world has heard their demands, has heard what they want, their request. So in a way, it's probably time for them to subside, because we have felt the impact even in Malaysia, and probably a lot of countries all over the world have felt how strong they can get, and what do they want from this. So it's probably time to resort to the dialogue now, and if it doesn't work, then they can probably go out and protest again.
Channel News Asia have parts of the translation of Tung's message, and I believe he was being sarcastic. This is what he told the student. Students are the future of Hong Kong. Among the students today, there will be someone who will become Hong Kong chief executive in the future. I believe you not only have aspiration and determination, you also have bravery and intelligence. I urge you to use your bravery and intelligence to understand differing views, engaging in positive interactions, seek consensus, and use your best efforts to shape the future of Hong Kong together with its people. It's ironic that he is asking them not to protest, but at the same time, he's saying that you are the future. You should, put your best effort in shaping the future of Hong Kong. Aren't they doing it?
It is a very contradicting statement in a sense. When he says, yeah, the students are the future of the country, of course, but what kind of future do you want? Do you want a bunch of kids who just listen to you and just bow down to everything and just blindly follow all the rules? Or do you want a bunch of people who can actually think for themselves? Someone who are actually observing the country, and they're finding ways to improve, and they want a democratic country. It's not everyone who can, look at the country and they know which are the areas that need to be improved. Most people are just ignorant, or they're happy with the way their life is going, so they just don't care. And is that the kind of leader that you want for the future?
Hong Kong students are definitely one of the most positive example we can give of younger generation of today. You see, even Taiwanese students, they are very, very vocal against their government. In Malaysia, it's somehow in a very infant, but we are still growing. A lot of our student leaders in the 70s were being crushed, and since then, the growing number of students joining all these protests is growing, but the pace is not as vocal as what you see in Hong Kong as well as in Taiwan. And a lot of the same can be said with ASEAN as a whole. ASEAN youth has not been as vocal, except for probably Indonesia and the Filipinos, in a sense that the future of ASEAN is definitely in the hands of future of the younger generation, and what ASEAN is focusing right now is definitely trying to boost ties with other regional blocs, and I think youth of ASEAN should know about it, and one of it is they should know that appointment of first EU envoy to ASEAN will boost ties. This is being reported by one of the news in Europe about that.
And the EU's foreign ministry underlined that important decision reflects Europe's growing engagement with ASEAN and an ambition to upgrade the existing partnership with Southeast Asian nations grouping to a strategic one.
Mm-hmm.
So with EU coming in, it seems that ASEAN is probably getting more and more popular, not just in the region but in other parts of the world, especially when it comes to other trade blocs in Europe and US. And it's also ironic in a way that people in Malaysia, or probably even in Southeast Asia, but ourselves are still not too clear about ASEAN, about this whole idea of having a 10 country.
And we don't even have to talk about the youth generation.
But EU is actually aware about us and what we stand for.
EU is very much aware. I mean, we have more than probably around 1 billion population if you are talking about ASEAN itself. And in the past, EU has never had that strong relationship with ASEAN. But since a lot of ASEAN countries are opening out, including Myanmar in that sense, EU realized that it must not ignore ASEAN. It has to follow the route of the US and China and make ASEAN a priority. And with that, I think what is clear here that the ambassador accredited to ASEAN is welcome and long-awaited step in European Union's relationship with one of the world's most dynamic and rapidly growing region. And it's true, a lot of emerging markets in Southeast Asia definitely could boost ties with a lot of other regional blocs between ASEAN and the others. With that, that's all for our news today. We will continue again with our Blast from the Grassroots, also on a topic about ASEAN youth. And we have Satria to share his view on the future of youth in Southeast Asia.
So stay tuned to us. Don't forget to like us on Facebook. We also have a Twitter page. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. And of course, also download the TuneIn app on your smartphone and look for Durian ASEAN.